All adventures, especially into new territory, are scary. Sally Ride. Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of It's Time for Science. I'm your host, Tom Racine. We are creating a podcast aimed directly at the amazing and wonderful science teachers, educators, and administrators out there, from pre-K to high school, who are engaging students and fostering curiosity about the world around them. In this episode, we talk with Newtown, Pennsylvania science teacher David Curry, the 2022 winner of the Paul DeHart Hurd Award for Teacher of the Year, given by the National Middle Level Science Teachers Association. David will talk about his teaching philosophies, tips and tricks for getting kids excited about science from day one, and how he integrates amazing and free technology from NASA into his lessons. Then, keeping with the NASA and space science theme, Dr. Erika Hamden from the University of Arizona joins us to talk about her career working on various projects with NASA, designing and building telescopes to explore the universe around us, and the importance of science education. Be sure to stick around at the end of the episode as producer David Lipman reviews another cool game for your classroom. Sticking with our space theme, it's a cooperative game from Cosmos Games called The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. But let's get things started with Teacher of the Year, David Curry. Well, welcome to episode 2 of It's Time for Science, a podcast for and about science educators and administrators from grades K through 12. Our goal is to support and celebrate the teaching of science, and we are honored to have Mr. David Curry, science teacher from Newtown Middle School in Newtown, Pennsylvania, with us. Dave won the 2022 Paul DeHart Hurd Award for Teacher of the Year, given by the National Middle Level Science Teachers Association. We're going to talk about his approach and philosophies of teaching, get some tips and strategies to excite kids about science, and all the cool stuff he does in his classroom. So welcome to It's Time for Science, David Curry.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
It's really very cool to talk to you. I love, I'm getting more and more into science teachers, and it's the greatest thing to talk to a Teacher of the Year. Congratulations on that from last year, by the way.
Thank you.
I want to start at the beginning. Basically, I was interested to find out what sparked your love for science in general, and did you always want to be a teacher, or how did your path take you that way?
Well, my dad was a teacher. He was a social studies teacher growing up, so I was very familiar with the schedule and structure of what teachers do on a daily basis. They often bring work home. And so I saw that with my dad. And I would have to give a lot of credit to both of my parents for just allowing me to explore my interest in science. They bought a telescope for me, which back then on a teacher salary wasn't easy. So they took me to the library, let me just hang out in the library for hours, just looking at all kinds of books on planets and stars and other interests that I had. But they just let me go as far as I wanted with science. And I had great elementary school teachers who performed a lot of hands-on activities, which were very interesting to me. So I would credit good teachers and good schools, good parenting, with allowing me to just nurture that interest in science. And that kind of just led me to not immediately think I was going to go into teaching, but just think I was going to, of course, just take as many science courses as I could. And my main interest was astronomy and weather and geology. And there was a program for teaching just those subjects that I was most interested in. So once I was finished up with high school, that just seemed like a natural fit.
I saw in your application for the Teacher of the Year, you were talking about something that inspired me as an artist. I come from more of an arts background, but was Carl Sagan's Cosmos, which came out when I was a kid, and it was the most amazing thing. I'd never seen anything like it, and it really was incredibly inspirational. And you'd mentioned that in your application.
Absolutely. Carl Sagan is just a huge role model for me, and his ability to take very, very confusing and complex ideas with the births and the deaths of stars and the history of science and how it builds on discoveries from prior scientists, but often makes wrong turns and has to correct itself. But Carl Sagan always talked about this self-correcting mechanism that science has called the scientific method. And he was so good at explaining how science works that we learn by experimentation. It's not perfect, but it's better than many of the other ways we try to learn about the world, like trial and error or just guessing. So Carl was just a magnificent explainer, and he could take just about any subject that normally people wouldn't be interested in and weave it into a story and just make it kind of come alive for you. And his show Cosmos on PBS, I watched every single episode, and later on I bought the DVD, and believe it or not, I used them in my classroom from time to time. And almost everything that he talks about is still current. I mean, it's like the topics, nothing really has to be corrected. Everything was pretty much correct as he told it. We have much more knowledge now, but those videos, my students find that he speaks in a really strange way, but that's one of the things those of us who watched him as a kid love about him is his voice.
Yeah. Everybody making fun of it. Billions and billions.
Right. Big fan of Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And I'm glad there's a large archive of his videos out there that you can use. And I have colleagues that are also big fans of Carl Sagan. So we have kind of a little cult following at my school. We have posters of him and stickers with his pictures all over our classrooms. It's really kind of funny.
I think it's a real testament to the power of teaching in general, and somebody who can take these giant concepts and make them accessible. And I think it really, as I read your application, I remember just I flashed back to that. It really inspired me as an artist because, as you said, his ability to make the complex very simple, using these special effects, using the different things, and it's really inspired me as a video guy and as an infographic guy, making those things simple. And it was actually a lot of it started with watching that show.
Well, I think they must have hired some really talented graphic designers.
It was cutting edge at the time, for sure. Yeah.
Right, to make that show. To explain science well, you need a lot of visuals, and that show certainly had a lot of great visuals. So, there's a lot of push right now to add art to the science world, and that's the whole reason we've gone from STEM to STEAM. The A stands for art.
Yay.
Yeah. So big fan as well. I'm not so much a prolific drawer or artist myself, but I try to use art in my classroom as much as I can. Yeah. And interestingly enough, it's kind of funny that we took this little side turn into art because I'm involved in a pilot NSF standing for National Science Foundation study that's looking at how to improve science education in the middle schools by using art and collaborating with students and using art to help them understand large data sets and global images. It's very cutting edge. It's really interesting. I've actually spent a little bit of time in my classroom putting artwork up on the board or up on the screen. It might be a pastel or an oil painting from 1700s of a volcano erupting. And then what I do is I just ask my students a series of questions. What do you see going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? I'm not feeding any information to them, but I'm just seeing what they're seeing and listening to what they're describing when they look at artwork. And then we take that and we switch gears and we go to visualizations of maybe where on Earth are volcanoes located or where on Earth are earthquakes occurring. And we link the two together. It's difficult for me to explain it well right now, but I can tell you that at the end of this study, I think it's going to change the way I teach. And I think we're going to be, in my classroom, I think my students will be better able to understand complex data sets because of what I'm doing as this pilot program, this NSF grant.
That's awesome, because I personally am a visual learner, but I've also, I think if you look at things like the TV show Star Trek inspired generations of scientists. If you look at, I remember there was an artist who, I believe he retired to Scottsdale, Arizona, where I grew up, a guy named Bob McCall, who was very famous for doing all the NASA paintings. And I had some of those, and they're so inspiring to look at these things and to see the technical, it just all comes to life when you see it. And I think that's a wonderful program. I think that's very, very cool. I did want to talk about, because one of my questions was, especially the more I get into this, how wonderful science is as a cross-disciplinary subject, because it integrates math, it integrates English, social studies, history, and of course, what we just talked about, art. So is that one of those things where working with other teachers within your school, is that a thing you recommend? Is it something you do, how teachers can work together in different classes?
Certainly, yes, absolutely, 100%. I work in a middle school that values the interdisciplinary nature of what we teach, and also other teachers such as math teachers, social studies teachers. We have teaming in the middle school. And so what we try to do, teaming is it's not new anymore, but at one time, the team concept in middle schools was somewhat of a new structuring way to help the transition from elementary school to high school, which, as I wrote in my Hurd application, is a very tumultuous time for students. They're going through a lot of physical changes themselves, and that's often where we lose students in their interest in science, is when they love it in elementary school and then they go to high school and they find it to be tedious or difficult. So middle school is that age to capture them. But what we do with teaming is we have a social studies teacher, a math teacher, an English teacher, and a science teacher who all share common students. We call them our team. So our team is called Team Legacy here at Newtown Middle School. And we have about 140 or 150 kids that we all share, and we meet and we talk about ways to be successful with each individual student. And if we bring up a student's name, everybody knows who I'm talking about because they all have that student. And we can say, well, how are they doing in math? How are they doing in English? And we do that to help students succeed. But we also have a lot of opportunity to talk about how we can integrate math and science and English and social studies. For instance, in social studies in 8th grade here in Pennsylvania, in Newtown, they do pretty much from colonial America up into the Civil War, and that fits in perfectly with Ben Franklin, his discoveries, and the renaissance of science that was happening at the time, and how a lot of our founding fathers got their inspiration from the great thinkers of Europe. And so there's a lot of opportunity to integrate those subjects together. So I'm a strong supporter. I think it's great. It's not always easy to do it, and I don't think it should be forced. Like, the kids know when you're trying to force some kind of connection where it's not obvious, but there are lots of opportunities to do it, and I strongly support the ability to do that. It gets sometimes harder with the differentiation that we have in math classes. So as we're having more and more students with different math courses that they take, it becomes difficult to have them all in the same team.
You're Teacher of the Year now, but you had to start off at some point. And what sort of challenges or struggles did you face when you started out? Do you have any words of wisdom? Because one of the things we talk about is maybe early grades, K through 3, of teachers who may not be science-based. Any kind of ideas for helping them out, and also just challenges that early teaching might face?
That's a great question, and I would tell new teachers, especially new teachers of science, but any teacher in any district, reach out to those teachers who are well regarded in your district. Ask your principal, who should I go to? Who has taught for a while and has a good reputation? I can bounce some ideas off and get some ideas on how they run their lessons and how they manage their class. Because if in any school, there's going to be a mix of teachers, new teachers, veteran teachers, teachers in the middle somewhere. So hopefully, as part of the new teacher process, there's an induction program where they teach you the culture of the district. Most schools have that. And hopefully they'll have an opportunity to give you a mentor teacher as a new staff member. But sometimes that's just window dressing. Like, you have a mentor teacher, but maybe they don't meet with you all the time. So as the new staff member, reach out to people in the district, send them an email, stop by their classroom. And if your principal will allow it, if your district is a supporter, ask them if you can step out of your classroom for a period or two and observe them. Like you really learn a lot by, I call it borrowing, but it's really like stealing the best ideas you see other
Yeah.
teachers. And I'll tell you, as a college senior, we took a methods class, and a methods class in science education is where they try to teach you the art and science of how to teach and the kind of things that you should do in your classroom to be effective, how to manage your class, how to do experimentation safely. And the wonderful thing about this course that I took is the professor decided that the best way to teach these young fledgling teachers is just to bring in master teachers and have them do some of their favorite lessons. So every single week we'd have a guest speaker come in, someone who's a master teacher, an award winner, someone who's been teaching for a few years, who has some favorite activities, and they brought in and did the favorite activities with us. And that's where I got some of my favorite activities. In fact, the nail activity, which I wrote about in my Hurd application, I actually got that from one of these teachers who came in and did it with us. It was a little experiment, takes about 5 minutes, and it was just so mind blowing that I just decided, you know what, I'm going to start my year with this activity. And for 31 years now, every single year, I have used this this 5 to 10 minute activity with students,
Like
just to
literally on the first
kind
day,
of
you said in your application, right?
first day, give them a challenge that may or may not relate to exactly what I'm teaching that year, but give them a challenge on the very first day that forces them to kind of work together with whoever they happen to be sitting next to, solve a problem, and then by the end of the period, usually everyone has solved it, and it's a problem that they thought was unsolvable. So getting back to your original question, reach out to other teachers who have ideas and tips and labs and things that you can borrow from them, but also get involved with organizations like the National Middle Level Science Teachers Association, like NSTA, like your state teachers associations. They almost always have conferences where they share favorite ideas and activities, and you can get some great ideas. And you come back and learn those, try them in your classroom, see how well they work. And also, you can share them with your colleagues. So, um, my district, again, was very supportive of me going to conferences. They thought it was great. You want to go to a science conference? Yeah, sure. It's work for teachers. You know, you have to step out of your classroom. You have to write lesson plans. There's a cost involved for the district. They have to pay for a sub to be in your room, but it's money well spent. And you get so much out of these conferences. We we call them nerd conventions because it's really just a bunch of science teachers getting together and showing us, oh my gosh, I did this really cool activity with my students. I got to show this to you, because they get excited about something that worked in their classroom. And the National Middle Level Science Teacher, they have these things called share-a-thons, which are perfect. You go into this big room at a National Science Teachers Convention once a year or twice a year, and you just you walk around the perimeter of the room, and you spend 5 minutes interacting with a teacher who's going to show you one of their favorite little demos or activities. And it's like um, it's so cool because you're just bouncing around all these different teachers. If you see a topic that you don't teach, you can go there and check it out if you want, or you can skip it and go to another teacher. These share-a-thons are really fantastic, and now with the ability to do virtual conferences, I always think it's better to do them in person. But if you can't get out of school, perhaps on your prep or in the afternoon or evening, you can watch someone do a virtual conference for you and get some great ideas that way. So reaching out to veteran teachers locally and also nationally, there's a lot of great teachers out there that can give you some good ideas. So I would encourage new teachers to do
I think
that.
that's great. You know, it's funny. The more I do this, the more I realize how many direct parallels there are between the art world and the science world, because it's a very solitary thing that you do when you're creating art or drawing comics or whatever. But then we love to go to conventions, just like you said, for that reason. It's the social aspect, but also the sharing and seeing what else is out there, because I'm sure a teacher can get so wrapped up in their own classroom, you know, dealing with that all year long. You have to get away from it to look back at it. I think it's a great suggestion.
Absolutely. And if you really get involved with some of these organizations, there are opportunities that you can take advantage of that you wouldn't get otherwise. There are free or very low cost graduate credit courses that you can take through organizations. I'll mention one of them because I'm involved with it, but the American Meteorological Society. They offered courses in meteorology and ocean science um, and climate science that were very close to free early in my career, and I took those courses. They were difficult courses, but they were some of the best courses that I've ever taken. They were online, and there was a textbook, of course, but those courses really changed the way I teach, and I was so impressed with those graduate courses that they offered that I became a mentor for them. And now when younger teachers or teachers across the country are interested in taking them, I help them through the process and I mentor them. And American Meteorological Society, they flew me out to Denver to present um, some interesting lessons that I've been doing in my classroom that I proposed to them. They flew me out to Denver, and that was 100% awesome to get to see meteorologists and teachers from out west. And they're also flying me to Oregon later in June to learn about paleoclimate ice cores and the oldest ice um, in Antarctica. Now, these are all expensive trips, but they have funding to allow teachers, as long as you're a teacher in a private or public school, they have funding to support you to do these things. So NASA, NOAA, National Science Foundation, there's money out there. It's scarce, but there is money out there for teachers to learn and professionally grow and even travel if they're interested and they reach out to those opportunities.
It kind of leads me to my next question, because in your application, you're also talking about all the amazing stuff you do with space stuff. The NASA program, a free NASA program called EarthCam, and dealing with the ISS, where the kids get to control a camera that's on the ISS and they get to do things. I mean, that's amazing technology. For an old guy like me, I'm looking at this thinking, oh my God, that's literally Star Trek. You know, I think that's the coolest thing. But I wanted to talk a little bit about your love of space. And you met astronaut Sally Ride and how inspiring that was. And how do you integrate space exploration and all that kind of stuff into your classes?
That's a great question. Again, this was an activity, EarthCam, that I didn't find on my own. I had an opportunity in my school district. We have a program called Deep Smarts, where it's an opportunity to share things that you're doing to other teachers in the district who might not be in the same building as you. And so you'll have maybe 10 or 20 different presenters, and you choose what you want to go to on an in-service day. And one of the programs was about EarthCam, and it sounded neat. So I went and learned all about this, and I've been using it ever since. I think I learned about it in 2006 or so. But that would mean that, it was so impactful for me, I just kept doing it. And yeah, my students take pictures from the International Space Station. And if there are any teachers listening to this podcast and you've never heard of EarthCam, you absolutely must look into it. Just Google EarthCam, but it's spelled with a K.
K-A-M.
Because K-A-M, it stands for knowledge, K for knowledge, acquired by middle school students. And it's open to elementary or high school students. Even college students could do it if they wanted to. But literally, my students take control of a camera on the ISS and use it to take several, 5, maybe more pictures of Earth from space. And it's a phenomenal program. And I've just been the biggest cheerleader for this program because I think it's so great. And EarthCam heard about this, that I've been using it for so long. And a few years ago, they offered me to bring a couple of my students down to Washington, D.C., because they were doing an expo at the Reagan Rotunda, I think is where we had it. And Sally Ride, unfortunately, was starting to get a little bit ill at the time, but she did remotely Zoom in to talk to us. And so I did get to see her. She died not long after she met with us, but she was so proud of what EarthCam had become because it was her pet project. She started it back on the space shuttle. She took a camera up and she says, this is a great teaching tool. Wouldn't it be awesome if students in middle schools or elementary schools could take part in the space program in some small way and feel connected? And it's just grown and blossomed into a phenomenal program. Can't say enough good about it.
Well, as you said in your application, sometimes the students choose places that have a personal significance, like an ancestral homeland or a place they want to visit, that minority students have a chance to feel personally connected with part of the globe they only knew by name. I mean, that whole experience that astronauts always talk about, coming back from space, seeing the Earth as a whole, what a wonderful way to get a part of that across to students.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's great. If you ever have a chance to listen to an astronaut, let's say an astronaut is coming to your community and is going to talk about anything, go listen to them. They always have amazing stories to tell. And, NASA doesn't just pick anyone to be an astronaut. They pick people who are talented, who can go through the program, but they also want people who, when they come back, will talk about it and teach about it, because that's one of NASA's big mandates is education. So every astronaut I've ever met has always been fascinating and interesting and just a great spokesperson for why we need to explore.
That's fantastic. I wanted to touch on a subject that comes up, especially post-pandemic, is teacher burnout. We're talking about all these wonderful things that teachers do, but it's a stressful job. All of the pressures of dealing with all the kids and all that kind of thing there. And it feels to me, maybe anecdotally looking in, there seems to be more burnout because of the pandemic, teachers retiring earlier, choosing other paths. Have you seen an increase in burnout? And how do you personally deal with those times when you're just like, man, this is a lot?
I think anybody who's taught a few months knows that there are some challenges that just don't exist in other professions. Now, I wouldn't trade teaching for any other profession. I love what I do. It's a great gig. I mean, let me just say, what other profession let's say you have a rough year and you have a really challenging group of kids. What other profession do all of those people that you're working with move on and you get a fresh new batch of young learners and a chance to make an absolute first impression all over again, almost like you're starting over. No matter how things are challenging or how bad things might get, you're going to have new kids the next year, and you have a chance to just learn from your experience and turn things around and do things better, learn from that experience. So that's the beauty of teaching, but it is true. I mean, I think the statistic that I heard is that half of all teachers leave in the first 5 years. And so I've been teaching for 31 years, and I've seen a lot of teachers who started and just didn't stick with it. They had trouble with all of the responsibilities, the paperwork. There's a lot of work you bring home. The thing that's changed since my early days of teaching is how much standardized testing has become mandated and used in ways that I don't think perhaps are the best way to use standardized testing. Teachers need to test. We need to evaluate. But I think sometimes we overtest, just because we need some kind of way to sometimes punish teachers. Teachers deal with all kind of challenging situations and students with broken homes, students in impoverished conditions, and these are out of the teacher's control. They're doing the best they can in many cases. And to have a kid sit through 3 hours of testing, when they're coming in and school is the safe place, and now you're going to give them a high stakes test, that they may have a rough home life, but they come to school and that's the safe place. I'd much rather be doing experiments and maybe going outside and doing a cloud observation with them. Sitting pencil paper and having them take a high stakes test is not my favorite thing to do, but it's kind of where we are.
Something you brought up that we'd love to touch on a little bit, one of the themes that we have for the month is outdoor observational learning, phenomena-based observational kind of thing. And you were just saying about how going out, looking at clouds, and how, bringing science to your local community. I think it's, looking at the Earth Cam, it's sort of a global sort of like world thing. But what kind of experience or what kind of things do you do to kind of tie your science lessons to the kids' local community, things that they can deal with and see every day?
That's a great question. Wherever you happen to teach, there's always an opportunity, if you have windows, to look out the window and see what kind of clouds are out there. I believe you're on the West
San
Coast.
Diego,
Is that correct? Yes. So Living in San Diego, you are probably well aware of the kind of atmospheric interference you can have when there are fires burning in places in California due to the long drought you've had. And on the East Coast, we really don't connect to that because we haven't experienced that except for this year.
Until recently.
I don't know if
Yes.
you're
Yeah,
aware,
yeah.
but
I have a lot of
yes,
friends in New York posting pictures of it looked like a set from Blade Runner. It was amazing.
exactly. So, the fires that were burning in eastern Canada swirled around and came down to right where we are in the last couple of days. And it was quite a shocker for a lot of students. They hadn't seen that before. I hadn't seen it in my years of teaching. Something that would last several days where you walk out and you smell smoke. So, as it's not a fun thing to have to go through, but it's a teachable moment. So, that's a perfect opportunity for me to connect with students and post announcements about, okay, so there's a lot of smoke out. Where's it coming from? Why is it coming to us when it's burning in Canada? How did it get down here? Um, these are opportunities to make sure kids use what I consider the most important science that they'll learn is the science about the Earth. They're always going to be living on Earth. So understanding weather patterns and hazards that we all deal with, if there is smoke outside and it's dangerous, how can we be safe? Is there a way to make sure that we're not breathing in this smoke? So I actually, whatever I happened to be teaching at the time, I spent a little bit of time in class just incorporating those outdoor observations. Kids were showing me pictures of the sunset through smoke and asking me about why the sun looks the way it does. Something you're familiar with on the West Coast, but it was new for us. So, yeah, there's always opportunities to look out the window, to go outside safely and experience nature. There's also great technology tools for students to make this easy. NASA again has developed an app with Globe. Globe is a program that's been going on for decades. It's a collaboration with NASA and NOAA and schools all over the world, actually, where students take weather observations. There's like Globe protocols for measuring cloud cover, rainfall, all kinds of different aspects of the environment. And there's an app called Globe Observer. Anybody listening to this podcast should jump on their phone, go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, and look for the app Globe Observer. It is a phenomenal app that you can teach kids to use in class, where they go outside, they use their cell phone or their iPad, and it asks them questions. Okay, what does the sky look like? Are there clouds? Is the sky blue? Are there any trails of airplanes called contrails? What are the shapes of the clouds? And it shows you pictures. Are they flat? Then the kids learn, oh, that's stratus. Are they puffy? Oh, that's cumulus. Are they wispy and feathery? Oh, that's cirrus. And using this app, which we all know kids love to use their phones, outside, they're answering these questions about the ground and the sky and how clear the air is. And then at the end, it allows them to turn their phone sideways and take pictures of what they're seeing. And the phone being connected to GPS, most phones now have a compass involved, it actually shows you exactly how to hold your phone looking straight up, and then looking to the north, south, east, west, and then looking down. And make a long story short, what they do is they upload these pictures and observations to the Globe website and to NASA. And NASA is really interested in knowing what the sky looks like around the world, because we have lots of pictures from space. We have lots of satellites that look down, but we don't have a lot of data of what the satellites see looking down at the exact same time that someone on the ground is looking up. So the great thing about this app is, about a day after they've submitted their pictures, they get an email from NASA saying, hey, here's what our satellite saw. The satellite saw 60% cloud cover. You said it was 60% too. It looks like we agree. And so it'll show you on a map what the cloud patterns looked like looking down, based on, and it'll show you pictures of what you saw looking up. It's just a really neat activity for kids. So I've just started using that over the last year or two, and it's totally free. There's no cost as long as kids have their own phones. Or if you don't really like them using their phones, you could always, like, if the school has iPads, you could probably use those too. So this is a great tool for teachers that hopefully someone listening to this podcast will take a minute to
I think
maybe
I'm going to go sign up for that. That sounds really, really cool. I love that idea. David, this has been a fantastic talk. I'm really, really just thrilled to have talked to you about all this stuff, and I think we've learned a lot. I want to thank you very, very much for being here, and I want to close with some of my favorite stuff, which is nerd questions. So, what are you super nerdy about in terms of like pop culture? Is it Star Trek, Star Wars, a little bit of everything? What's your nerddom of choice?
Well, I've always been a Star Trek fan, and I really loved The Next Generation, which is why I was glad that Picard kind of did an homage to The Next Generation and brought back a lot of those characters. I like Star Wars as well, but being a science teacher, I kind of like that Star Trek was more about exploration and discovery instead of just battling the bad guys. But yeah, so I do like some of the newer Star Wars spin-offs on Disney. But I'm also I really love the study of volcanoes and how the Earth just, sometimes unexpectedly, sometimes expectedly, just belches up all kinds of interesting material. So any chance I get to go see a volcano, active or inactive, is really just a dream for me. So, I've been to Hawaii. I'm excited to be going to Oregon later this month. And I know that there, in the Cascades, there's active and inactive volcanoes there. So I'm just excited.
It's a big topic right now. They're evacuating places in the Philippines. There's all sorts of activity seems to be going on right now, volcanic wise.
Right. And I'm in a subject where, if I teach long enough, there's going to be an eruption that I'm going to talk about in class. A couple of years ago, all flights to Europe were canceled. Why? There was an Icelandic volcano that was throwing all kinds of ash up, and planes couldn't fly.
The real question is, could you pronounce the name of the volcano? Because that was crazy.
I don't think I can, but I really want to go to Iceland. So my wife wants to plan a vacation to Europe. That is my top choice. That's my top choice.
But David, thank you again so much for your time. This has been really, really great.
Likewise. Thank you for having me, Tom. I appreciate it. And, good luck to all the teachers out there in finishing up the year, unless you're already finished. And if you are finished, enjoy the well-earned summer break.
It's time for science, and who better to talk to than a scientist? We are thrilled and honored to have Dr. Erika Hamden here on our show. Dr. Hamden is an assistant professor of astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Arizona, having gotten her degrees at a couple of tiny little schools like Harvard and Columbia universities. Her research focuses on UV instrumentation, detector technology, the evolution of galaxies, and star formation. Dr. Hamden has received numerous awards and citations, all sorts of honors from NASA, several TED Talks, and is designing and building telescopes that will help us explore the universe around us. She's also very active on Instagram with over 60,000 followers explaining the coolest stuff about stars and space, and just started a TV show with PBS in Arizona called New Frontiers about science and innovation. Oh, and she's also getting her pilot's license as part of her dream to one day get to space as an astronaut. I'm pretty sure that barely scratches the surface of her resume, but we'll be here all day, and I want to dive right into our conversation. And so my first question is, when do you sleep?
I'm actually obsessed with sleeping. I sleep always 8 hours a night. It's like the most important thing in my life. And I think that's why I can do everything else, because I'm obsessed with sleeping. That's actually
a very good, I think people they burn the candle at like 9 ends and then they wonder why they can't do anything further. So as we are focused on elementary and high school teachers and science of education, of course, I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I know you're originally from New Jersey and both your parents are scientists and teachers. So is that sort of where you got your early sort of inspiration to do this right from the very beginning?
I guess so. They never pushed in any particular direction. I have a bunch of sisters and I'm the only one that ended up as a scientist. But they introduced me to, the concept of space as a thing. I remember having a conversation with my mom about the Big Bang. And then I was looking it up in our encyclopedia because it was the 80s. And so we didn't have the internet. And I would take books out from the library, and they were very encouraging. And yeah, it was like I think they were encouraging, and I never got discouraged, which I think is something that happens to a lot of people, that they have an interest in science, and then someone tells them that they shouldn't do it or they can't do it. And I think I'm somewhat unique in that never happened to me. Like there's one instance in my whole life that I can recall a teacher telling me like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be in that class.
How about any particular teachers in your career early on that like very much inspired you to continue down that path? Because a lot of kids have interest in space and dinosaurs, but then they move on or something else happens, but you stayed with it. So were there any teachers that kind of pushed you along that turn?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of teachers that were just like really great. I went to public school in Montclair, New Jersey, like my whole childhood. And I had so many incredible teachers who I feel like they gave me all these tools that turned out to be incredibly valuable for like how to learn things, and, you know, it's the basics of math and science, but also just like how to think about stuff and how to like kind of get into a scientific mindset. My physics teacher from high school, Mr. Inglis, he was a really interesting character, and our physics class was really small. It was AP physics with calculus, and I felt like that was my first introduction to physics, and I've taken physics like 5 times. You take like physics in high school, then you like retake it in college, then you take like advanced physics, and then you take general relativity, and at every point you're like, oh my god, this is so hard. And I felt like with him, as the first encounter to physics, I think that was really valuable to me, to feel like, oh, I can understand this, even though it's really a weird way of thinking about the world. And he also was just like a really fun teacher to have, and he'd been doing it for a really long time. He was really good at it. Interestingly, my dad is a physics professor at Montclair State in New Jersey, and from what I've heard, he's an excellent physics teacher, but when he was trying to teach his children, he was like, why don't you understand this?
Well, I think it's funny because the more I learn about teachers, they really do gravitate towards certain age groups. You know, you're really good with little kids, or you're really good with high school kids, but you know, they don't mix very well, it seems. Yeah,
so he's like really good with college students, and maybe less good with like high school students.
I can see that, yeah.
And I also, interestingly, had a Latin teacher that I really connected with, Miss Mance, and she was like just like a wonderful mentor and like a really lovely person. And, you know, high school, you have like a lot of big feelings about things a lot of the times, and she was just like great to talk with.
That's great.
Yeah, so I feel like I had a lot of really wonderful teachers. I mean, even like elementary school, middle school.
I loved your TED Talk about the Fireball mission, and how really the TED Talk is about failure. And it was very, very moving in a lot of ways. You could tell you're very emotional about this whole thing. For a quick background, it's basically a telescope you worked on for about 10 years and a balloon to go up into high, not orbit, but high into the sky to be able to look for hydrogen, right? Is that to map out hydrogen in the universe?
That's right.
And 10 years and a Falcon landed on it one time, and there were scratched things and all sorts of failure up and down. And what I love about your TED Talk is it's really about, that's what science kind of is. It's a constant success and failure thing. And I think now turning that to education, how would you like explain that to kids, how important failure really is? Because science and art, I feel, as an artist, are the two subjects that deal with failure a lot. You know, with math, it's like, here's the right answer. In social studies, this is the year this happened. But with science and art, it's about teaching kids that it's a process. So why is that important, do you think, to teach the kids the whole concept of failure and moving on?
Well, I think, I mean, from the perspective of science, like the process of science is contingent on failure. Like the scientific method requires that you have a hypothesis that you're testing. And in order for the hypothesis to be valid, it has to be wrong or be able to be wrong. And you're checking, like, is this hypothesis wrong or is it right? So the failure is built into the whole process. And, but it's never really talked about that way. Like the scientific method is introduced and it's like, oh yeah, you test a hypothesis and then you evaluate and then you revise it. But like the key is to be able to be wrong, and you have to be willing to like give it a try and see what happens. And I think society views failure as a bad thing. I mean, even if you're a teacher and like one of your students is failing, like that's bad. But I think just because we use the same word for both things, they're actually describing different situations. Like the failure of an experiment is not a failure. It's just a different piece of information. And I think that's in my own work and in interactions with my students, I try to emphasize that like you can't discover anything unless you're willing to mess it up. And that aspect is really, really, really important. And if you never mess anything up, then you're not really pushing any boundaries. So like, what's the point?
I know when I teach art, it's the same kind of thing. It's like your sketchbook is nothing but failure. That's the whole point of the sketchbook, is that now you take that and you do your final, but it's sort of, kids, I think, look at something and they just, oh, that's how it's drawn. And they think they can immediately do it. And no, that's not the process. So I've always felt failure is incredibly important for kids. And that's what I love about science education, is like you just said. I think that's great. Somebody asked me to ask you this about the fireball thing. If you were to explain this to an elementary teacher or a class, to simplify it, what would you say your work is, especially dealing with fireball and hydrogen in the universe?
So I would say my work is to build telescopes that go to space or the top of the atmosphere to observe not galaxies or stars, but the stuff that's around them that is really faint and really hard to measure. So that's why we have to build new telescopes for it. And so we're always trying to do something that no one has ever done before, which is hard, but also very satisfying.
You could have stopped at that first sentence. I build telescopes that go to space. Okay, we're
telescopes.
Done. Thanks. That's the coolest thing I've heard today. So, as an update, I wanted to ask you, I know that in the TED Talk, you said you were going to try another launch because it failed. The balloon didn't go all the way. And so it was a very difficult time, but you bounced back. Obviously, you said in the TED Talk you were going to try again in 2020, but I'm assuming this whole pandemic thing may have slowed stuff down a little bit.
Yeah, it really got in the way.
Just a little bit. What's going on? But is there a launch this fall, I think you said? September, maybe?
Yes. Yeah, so we have... we realigned the instrument, the optics. We had a couple of optics that like parts of them broke, and not the whole surface, so we can reuse them, but we had to like realign them, rebond them. And that took a couple of iterations. And so now everything is like aligned. We're doing a bunch of tests. The instrument was at Arizona for a little while, and then it got moved to Caltech in like March, February. And so now we're doing final checks of like, do all the subsystems work, putting everything together, integrating it into the larger like gondola, which is the term for the whole thing that hangs from the balloon. And so then we're going to ship it to Fort Sumner, New Mexico in July, and then we'll all go there. And hopefully the weather will cooperate for us.
I like that part of the TED Talk where there were a period in 2017 where there were 6 straight weeks of rain in the middle of the desert.
It was like,
wow, okay.
It was a really bad hurricane season. That was also the year when like there was a lot of flooding in Houston, and there was like hurricane after hurricane, and in New Mexico you get the tail end of that moisture.
Why can't you launch in Arizona? It's a big open desert. Come on.
I know.
You drive like 20 minutes.
Right
there.
They picked this location, Fort Sumner, New Mexico. They were in the 50s or 60s. They were looking for places with good wind conditions, like surface winds and winds like at about 1,000 feet. And the year that they were doing, the wind was anomalously good at Fort Sumner, and it has never been as good as it was that one year when they picked it. So they're actually looking for other locations, potentially like Eastern Oregon, because the wind is not great, and weather conditions are changing. Like we used to do launches from Fort Sumner in the spring and in the fall, and then the spring, the wind conditions and like rain and whatever just got too unstable, and so they stopped doing spring campaigns, and there's only the fall campaign. And then also the area is getting busier, so the other reason you go there is because there's nobody there. And
I was going to suggest Albuquerque balloons, because they do the balloon festival, but there's probably too many balloons. Getting in the way on the way up. Like the balloon goes up, but then it has to come down somewhere, and like you only have a small amount of control over where that is, and like. So some of the wind conditions are if the upper atmospheric winds are too strong, the balloon can end up in California, and
and you can't bring it down like anywhere in LAX airspace. So you may just have to like ditch it in the Pacific Ocean. And obviously we don't want to do that. So like there's a lot of really interesting restrictions on like where the balloons can go, and therefore like what weather is acceptable for the launch conditions.
I think you need to.
I've learned a lot about like weather and FAA rules.
Things you didn't think you'd have to know about. Right, there you go. You can. I suggest you strap a grad student to it, and then they can control a little bit. There's got to be somebody for extra credit.
We've joked about that.
Yeah, extra credit. I can do that. So, speaking a little bit about that,
they like flip all the switches.
Yeah, exactly. Just duct tape. He'll be fine. So. While we're on that subject a little bit, speaking of things that you like weather and patterns, you're going for your pilot's license because you want to get into space one day. That's amazing. I mean, how cool is that? But how likely is that path? I always
very
assume,
unlikely.
But you gotta go for it, man. I'm telling you, I love the pilot's license part. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the chances are 0 if you don't apply. So I'm giving it a try, and I'm doing the pilot's license mostly because it's really fun and I really like it. And the astronaut thing is secondary just because it's so unlikely. It makes you a better candidate, but there's lots of other things. And like there's, I know people who have spent a full year in Antarctica. And if you're there for the winter, you're not getting out. You're like are in the dark for 6 months. Wow. And like I could have done that, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend a whole year away from everything. So there's stuff that I'm willing to do or I want to do, and it happens to align. So the pilot's license is one of those things. But I had a lesson this morning, which was really fun. So we fly out of Ryan Airfield. It's a small airport near Tucson. And then we flew to Tucson International Airport and did some landing, different like precision landings, soft field landings, short field landings, and these different types of landings. Not every airport is a beautiful 2-mile long runway, and you have to be able to deal with different situations. So that's been really fun, and I've been doing it on and off for a while. It's taken me a long time, but I'm taking my written test a week from Saturday. And I'm basically done with all of the requirements. Like I've done the solo cross-country flights, which is the aviation term for when you land at a different airport than you took off from. Sometimes when I say cross-country, people are like, "Oh, are you flying to New Jersey?" And and I'm
that was my first thought. Maine to California.
In my like little Cessna 172, it goes like 100 miles an hour. But it's just that you're flying to a different airport and you do a landing and then you come back to your home airport, and that's considered cross country.
It's very cool. I'm not a big fan of heights in small planes, so the only time I'm going to be in a small plane is if I'm being evacuated somewhere and hopefully unconscious after a terrible accident. That's
no. Well, hopefully you never experience that then.
Yes, I hope not. Same with a balloon. I will never go up in a balloon for the same reason. So, back to education in general. I would just want to get some words from you in terms of why science education is important, because I think there are science teachers who face this with their districts with getting less funding. Why are we teaching science? And maybe even a few words on, and again, I wrote down that I if this was a podcast in the year 1023, we'd be talking about anti-science rhetoric, but we have to talk about anti-science rhetoric.
Yeah.
And how does a teacher combat that? I mean, to me, it's like my eyes glaze over, like, what, you're anti-science? That's interesting in this day and age, but it is something that teachers do have to deal with. So if you could weigh in a little bit on that, why science is important, and how do we fight this sort of weird anti-science movement in a way that seems to be in society? Yeah,
that's like such an important question. I mean, I think science education is essential because we live in a world that it was created by science, like better living through science. and was it like Arthur C. Clarke that said sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic? But we live in a world where people have access to technology and they have no idea what makes it work or how it works or like what the implications of the technology are. And I think that ignorance can be leveraged against them. If you like don't know how cell phones work, then someone can be like, "Oh, the 5G towers are poisoning you," and they're not. If you know how they work, you can see very clearly like it's just a different way of communicating, and there's no like it's not high energy, high frequent or like high energetic photons. It's just a different signaling system. But you can kind of distract people or manipulate them when they don't really know how anything works. And I teach a general ed class at the U of A that's for like non-majors who need to fulfill a science requirement. And frequently it's like the first and last science class that they will take in college, maybe the last science class that they'll ever take. And one of the things I try to talk to them about is like how science works, and that process of like failure and refinement is like a key part. And so if science is working correctly, there will always be new information that is better than the old information. That like, it's not bad that Isaac Newton's conception of gravity was surpassed by general relativity, which will be surpassed by something else. That's the point. That's how it's supposed to work, that each version is better. The situation that we find ourselves in now is not one of where people are like, oh, this is wrong, or like climate change isn't real. The situation is where they say, we don't know. Like, it's about doubt. It's not about proving something right or wrong. It's about injecting enough doubt into a conversation to keep people from acting, or to like keep the status quo moving. So one of the things I talk about is like, listen to what people are telling you and ask yourself, why does this person have this perspective, or like what is motivating them? Frequently it's just money. It's like not really that complicated, unfortunately. Fortunately.
Yeah, that is the general answer. Yeah.
and like, who does it benefit? Like, does it benefit you? Does it benefit someone that already has a lot of money and they just want to keep things that way? And to question, to like be skeptical, not about like the scientific claims necessarily, but like the motivations of the person that is trying to tell you something. And you can do that with me, and I think that my claims will stand up to whatever scrutiny, because like I don't really get paid that much. I mean, it's fine. But being able to think about like, well, who benefits from this, and to also know that like, just because you can't know everything, science isn't like a search for a truth or like a universal thing that is always right all the time. Science is a process, and through that process you can understand how the world works. You may never arrive at the perfect like model. It's always an approximation, but that you can make predictions about what will happen because you have a model that is pretty good.
I think that's kind of an interesting summation, because a lot of what I perceive is people don't like to be wrong. And it's like, science is like, no, I'm going to be wrong at some point.
All the time.
All the time. And so it's weird, this thing of people like, they double down when they're wrong, or when they're totally proven that this is not a truth, but they'll double down on it because they don't want to admit that they're wrong. I'm like, yeah, but that's what science training. That's why I think education in science for kids is so important, to understand that new information came in. Oh, okay, then let's do this.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it doesn't like. I think one thing that has been helpful for me as a scientist is like, there is no relationship between my value as a person and my ability to be right or wrong about a question. Like, oh, I'm wrong. Okay. Like, then I have to learn something, and it's fine. Like, I'm still a valuable, important human. And I think a lot of people, their conception of self is like too bound up in being right all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I think that I'm in my 50s and I see my friends, and there's like two paths. One is you think you know everything, and the other one is I realize I don't know anything, and I'm on that path. I'm on the the age I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So it's like, and it's the other people I think are the problem. It's like, no, I know everything. I've been around the block. No, you haven't lived in China. You haven't been here.
Yeah.
You have, I mean, it's like, how do you think you know everything? It just, I don't know. It's a whole different subject. So
yeah. I mean, I think like keeping a curiosity. I worked with a professor at Caltech who, one of the most incredible things about him was he would be in this room full of people, and he would say, well, I don't understand, or I don't know what you mean, or I don't know what you're talking about. Like, can you explain it more? And he really set like a wonderful tone in all those meetings of like, it's okay to be like, hey, I don't know. And that's how you learn stuff, and that's how you get more information, and then you can make better decisions, and you can do things better. And so I strive to have that kind of attitude, and to make it okay for the people around me to be like, I don't know, I don't understand.
Right. And not feel stupid about it.
Yeah. The only stupid thing would be to pretend that you know something and then like mess it up.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Willingly mess it up because you didn't ask the right question.
Yeah.
Dr. Erika Hamden, thank you so much for this time. Just a delight to meet you and to talk to you and get all this wonderful, valuable insight. And best of luck. My wife is an actor. I'm involved in theater, so I don't want to say good luck because that's bad for us. I don't know why.
No.
So break
I'm
legs.
happy to take all the luck.
All right, good luck. All right, yeah. In your case, good luck with your launch in September and everything else. And thank you so much for this.
Yeah, it's been great to be on. Thank you for having me.
Hey there, I'm David Lippman, FOSS Program Manager and Producer. In this section of the podcast, we'll draw your attention to various pieces of media that we think you'll enjoy or might be fun or useful in the classroom. Keeping with our space theme, we took a look at The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9 from Cosmos Games. That's Cosmos with a K. In The Crew, players are astronauts working to find the mysterious Planet 9. It's a cooperative game based on traditional trick-taking card game mechanics. Layered on top of these mechanics are 50 missions that get progressively harder as the game goes on. Rounds take about 10 to 20 minutes and last until the tasks associated with a mission are completed or a task is failed. Players are not allowed to communicate directly except with special communication tokens. Per usual, there are many videos online showing you more detail how to play. The Crew is suggested for 10 years and up, and kids with some game experience may be able to jump right in because of the traditional card mechanics at the heart of the game. Now, unlike most of the games and media we'll review, The Crew has a fantastical story at its base. But we love how players have to work together as a team, like astronauts or students in your science class, and become invested in all succeeding together. Players all succeed a mission together or all fail a mission together, and hopefully there are some lessons in those failures. A special thanks to Cosmos Games for providing us with a review copy of The Crew. And please send us your suggestions for books, games, videos, or anything else you think we should review. Thanks for listening.
It's Time for Science is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lippman and Tom Racine, and is sponsored by School Specialty and FOSS, the Full Option Science System, at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. Be sure to check out FOSS over on Facebook and Twitter.